So maybe Curtis, if you wouldn't mind kind of giving me a brief overview, a bit more specific than what I just said, but into your journey and kind of leading up to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I competed in cross country skiing for the Canadian national team, uh, sort of at a junior level and into the early senior levels from when I was about 12 years old all the way up till I was about 20. At 20, that was 2010, I decided to make the tough transition out of sport. I'd been plagued by a lot of injuries for quite a few years at that point, and I decided that my skills and talents could probably be used better in another arena or sphere. And so I transitioned out into schooling, ended up going to law school, and now I've been working as a corporate associate at a big Canadian law firm for about 5 years now.
Kind of diving into your journey with the cross country skiing. Can you talk about what that looked like for you from a young age, how you progressed, and how you got onto the national team?
Yeah, so I started with just generally, I was started as actually a runner, and my dad had me into cross country skiing. To be honest, I didn't really like it at first. It's not really a sexy sport by any means. I wanted to play hockey or do something else that all my sort of colleagues were doing, but I didn't necessarily have a knack for those sports, but I did have a knack for some of these endurance sports. So, uh, moved up through cross country skiing. I got quite into it, I guess, when I was about 12 or 13 and started sort of pursuing it a little bit more heavily. I moved from there through to the provincial levels and finally up to the national ski team. So on the junior national ski team for a few years, and I represented Canada at the World Cup before deciding to retire in 2010.
Mm. And so looking back on your journey in sport, what would you say is your greatest accomplishment or kind of one of those high moments for you?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of glass half full because I didn't necessarily achieve the accomplishment I set out to achieve, which was making the Olympics. But in terms of maybe the most impactful achievement that I had was probably making the national team. I mean, you dream about doing that when you're younger for years and years, and I guess the culmination and to finally make it onto that team was pretty special and impactful to me, I guess.
Mm. And what did your transition look like out of out of sport? You know, why did you make that decision when you did, and kind of how did you go about that? What was the process and the journey like?
Yeah, so in 2010, I'd been struggling with some injuries for a few years now. Uh, I had surgery that year for compartment syndrome. Things just weren't really going my way, and 2010 was obviously the 2010 games, and so the next ones would have been 2014. And I guess I kind of weighed my chances of going to 2014, which I was in sort of a group of, I don't know, 5 or 6 individuals fighting for a handful of spots on that team, weighed that against what I could do in school in the next 4 years. Always kind of knew I wanted to be a lawyer. That's 7 years of schooling. So I figured that my talents would be best placed moving out of sport and into schooling. Uh, so yeah, made that tough decision and haven't looked back.
And do you mind if we jump into the injury a little bit? Because I think there are probably a lot of athletes who part of the reason why they end up transitioning or a contributing factor might have something to do with injury. And so can we talk a bit about, you know, maybe what that was like for you? I think for some people, when their identity is placed fully in sport, as in they only see themselves as being an athlete, being a competitor, and that's who they are and that's their worth and everything. And when you go through something like an injury, that can lead you to a really, really dark place. You know, what was that like for you? How did you see it?
Yeah, I think it's very tough for athletes and myself as well because you feel like your whole sporting career it's over, and it's not necessarily because of something you actively did or didn't do. It's because you ended up having an injury. So yeah, it's definitely tough and to look back and to see my sporting career and not having achieved what I wanted to due to an injury. I guess it's tough in that way. but there's a lot of things I guess you learn out of injury. There's a lot of soft skills that you could bring out of an injury. You can look back on and you could really apply to whatever your future, I guess, career goals are.